cannot defeat me.
In the universe, multiple galaxies coexist. Every single one of them different from one another. But a particular one stands out. In this galaxy, a strange rock adrift the dark emptiness since the cosmic dawn landed. As time passed, this beating and emitting light. It eagers for the energy that only the stars can provide. We call this special galaxy the near side of yonder.
Vamos só fazer o intro. Está desligado, André. Hello. Usa aqui. Hello. Test. 1, 2, 3. Preferes que eu use este? Ok. Quando for para começar, André, diz-me. All right. Hi, everybody. Good morning. Welcome to our event AI in Games. I'm very happy to see so many people here today, and like to thank everybody for showing up and for our invited guests to accept our invitations. It was some work organizing this event, and before we start, I would like to thank my colleagues here, Michaela and Nuno, who helped me organize this in collaboration for the Masters of AI in Games. That's going to be opening, or going to have their first year in September. And also like to thank our director, Philippe Louche, where he's there in the back taking pictures, who is our director in the video games course, and also the playful and game design masters here at Lusofona. So before we start, just like to again thank all the speakers that accepted our invitations here and taking their time out of their day to come here and speak and share their ideas and knowledge with us here, and among our students also. I'm not sure, Miguel, do you want to say something or? Yeah? Okay. And also, before I hand the microphone to Philippe Louche for his presentation, he's going to offer like a brief overview of here at Lusofona. Just also like to say that we also have an Erasmus Mundus, the Replay Game Masters, which will be also opening, have its first semester this year as well, which is mostly European Masters in collaboration with the University of Genk, or Alto, and the Luca Film School, yes, Luca School of Arts. And it is kind of a very innovative masters where each semester student takes the course one semester here in Lisbon, then in Genk in Belgium, and then in Alto in Finland. So we're also very proud of opening this masters also this year. And now, without further ado, I think people are tired of hearing me talk for a while, so I'm going to invite Philippe Louche to give a brief presentation on Lusofona.
Hello. Yes. Okay, give me just 1 second. I just plug in the HDMI. So thank you. I will take just a few minutes. First of all, to thank this amazing team. You are telling that I am the director, blah, 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 blah. We don't have directors here. We are a nice team that cannot plug in an HDMI. Okay. Okay. Cool. So I'll try to do this as briefly as possible. University of Lusofona, just offering to Pedro a beautiful logo, our director of a lab, in green today. It's green today. I don't know why it's green today, but yes. So basically, we do here several relevant activities, more in the context of games. Hey Lab is our research lab in psychology and games, where we are very, very well connected, and also with another research center, SICANT, in communication science. So of course we have several courses in educational areas, and we are looking for to have lots of interactions to create social impact, etc. So in a nutshell, several projects that we have in games, some of them are related with serious games approach, developing games for intellectual disabilities, for among the others specific goals. We have this amazing Happy Qui project. Last week we were developing a game jam in Orbit, which is a project that relates companies. In this case, the Battleship is working with us. We are 13 partners and ways to push. The goal is to push young adults to develop games through culture and for culture, which is amazing because municipalities of Óbidos, in our case, companies are seeking for different games, probably meaningful games, but that could generate an impact, a commercial impact. Not only, it's not like the other projects in serious games where we have the biggest aim of social impact. In this case is to generate also employment, etc. So several games with these amazing teams, several projects that we have been developing with these amazing teams of researchers. And another big project is FilmEU Alliance, which is 4 universities that came together to develop a project, a European university. And now we are 8 universities, so we are in deeply contact among peers, and we are developing several synergies, several events, which is amazing, the network we are bringing forth. So universities from film, documentary, animation, games, which is an amazing, cool experience. And I will pass here just a brief showreel. Okay, so from this FilmEU Alliance, one of the youngest babies, the recent babies that we have here is the replay, as Phil was presenting. So we had, for the first intake in September, we'll start, and we have 24 selected students, worldwide students, just from Europe. Some of them are very high talents and skills in programming, others in arts or in animation, which going to be a fantastic experience. So they will stay here 6 months in Lusoften, 6 months in LucasArts in Genk. After they go to Espoo, to Helsinki, to Halto. And at the end, we expect in the last semester, in the 4th semester, they will be split between the universities depending of each areas of interest. And let's hope that in 2 years we have the final graduated students with amazing projects and with the networks at the Finland industry, etc. And here I hope also with the recent gaming hub, etc. So connections here quite oriented to the industry. So to finish, to summarize, we have the video games course we started in 2009. We are recent among 100 students, normally 110, 120. Our students' dreams, of course, is to work in the AAA industry. Their perceptions, they think they are developing in the games, but of course our works are vertical slices. Some of them really, really cool. we have also the Lusofna Games collection on Steam. If you want to download it, it's for free with a selection of 4 games. And this year we're gonna release a new collection with the most recent games. Things that are really, really interesting, and I would like to share here to open to the community. We have the Games Creators Club. Every month there's a team that is released. For instance, Freedom, it was the last one, and the community comes here and presents something about Freedom. It could be a game, a 3D element, a drawing, it could be a cake, it could be whatever it is. The idea is to boost creativity within games, and we have a lot of teachers, students, amazing students there that participates a lot. So, for instance, one of the thematic was Playdate, so they have to develop games with that crunch, etc. So I was explaining last week we were this with the Epic Wii Culture Game Jam. Already talked about that. This is the kind of games we developed here, the best games, of course, and I'm presenting here because we have one of the amazing students, our alumni, that developed this Xisto game. So a game with some cultural heritage from Portugal, really, really fun game. You can download it by that games collection. So this is the kind of games we develop it, but of course I'm gonna pass just because I don't want to keep too much time. And other totally different games. I don't know, there's no how here, but it's not an issue. This game was totally different, developed in the same year. All the contents were procedurally generated. One of the students was crazy about VFX, and after this he went to work to develop Prince of Persia because he made a fantastic showreel of his portfolio based on glows and visual effects and stuff like that. So when our students have patience, I know that in Portugal, with the number of universities that we have here, they could do amazing things and start working in the industry, but they need that passion, sorry. So to finish, now I think I'm finishing. Now we have 2 game masters, game design and playful media. We're gonna be for the certain take. We have almost 20 students, 10 students per year on the game design and playful media, and next year we're gonna have games and AI. Replay already talked about that. And so in game design and playful media, we seek for alternative controller games, games with social impact, more with a meaningful approach. Of course, they lead also with several areas. For instance, we have seminars every week with lots of invitations. Sometimes they go to mini clips to understand a little bit more for game analytics, or specialists from, like last week was Ricardo Flores here teaching them a little bit about production. So it's very, very well related with the industry that we have it here. And nowadays, just to finish, in 2009 was very, very hard to create a games course. Now it's much more easier due to the fantastic ecosystem that we have here with lots of companies. Now with the Gaming Hub, I hope that we can relate more also with all of the universities here in Lisbon and Porto also. So thank you very much for this time. Phil, thank you a lot for bringing all these people to this event, and Michaela too.
Thank you.
So, yeah.
Okay, thank you, Felipe. Next up is going to be Diogo Rato. He's a founding member of the Associação Produtores de Videojogos Portugueses.
Kind of.
Kind of, okay. And I know Diogo since, I guess, since the FDG we organized last year, the Foundations of Digital Games.
Yeah.
And Diogo is, I think, perfect because he's really in between academia and industry, and has very interesting research in AI. And I think he's going to speak about it today. So
Okay.
feel free. Thank you.
Thank you for the words, Phil. And firstly, yeah, I'll be talking under two hats. The first one is the Portuguese Game Developers Association, APVP, and the second one is Test Waves. I will briefly talk about the second one, which is a venture that myself, Pedro Fernandes, and Rui Prada are moving towards creating a startup that tests video games using AI. But I received the invitation from Phil. He explained a little bit the context about the course and everything happening here at Lusofna. And my goal for this presentation is more or less to talk to everybody about what's been going on in Portugal in terms of AI, not only from game studios, but also from tools and service providers, and try to give a brief overview of what's been happening around the world with the new foundation models, LLMs, ChatGPT, and its impact on the industry, but also not forgetting what AI in video games is actually about. So there's more than 3 to 4 decades of research and development of AI in games, and it's just not about LLMs and these things. So I want to give you a little bit of an outline of the presentation. Phil asked me to do this in 30 minutes, but I think I'm going to take a little bit less time because from my understanding, Noon will talk about what is the state of the art in the industry for AI. So I'm going to talk a little bit about my perspective as a researcher of AI in games, then move a little bit to AI-driven tools and service providers, and also finish up with the impact of AI in the gaming industry. So starting with the first one, I finished my PhD last year around June, and I started doing research in AI in 2016, more or less. And back then, for me, AI was a field by itself. It was not really about doing AI in games, but I started to slowly realizing that, yeah, games were a perfect sandbox and a controlled environment to conduct research in AI. So when I joined GIPES, also with Carlos Martin there, we started by developing a law train, under the law train European project, the Virtual Suspect, which the goal was to teach police interviewees the good questioning techniques and so on. And we used several technologies that were pretty cool at the time. They were not as embedded in the industry as they are nowadays. We used multiple virtual reality headsets. We were using text-to-speech and other sort of multimodalities to sponsor the decision-making of the agents. And this was an interesting project because it allowed us to explore different facets of AI that we were exploring while doing our masters. And we actually developed a product that was used across different police forces in the European Union. And I'd like to highlight 3 specific points that were kind of important to me and my career afterwards. The first one was the interactive storytelling aspect of the game itself. So the virtual suspect had to lie to the police interviewee. So one of the aspects that they would have to do is adapt the story during the interaction with the agent and with the human. So we were able to create good editor tools to alter verbal and non-verbal behavior from the agent, and also to employ multiple modalities to help the decision making of this virtual suspect. Secondly, as I said, we also had an agent that would inspect the interaction and then by the end would provide some feedback. And at the time we used machine learning to do that, very crude machine learning at the time, support vector machines, linear regression, to identify patterns and other good and bad questioning techniques and then provide some feedback to the user. And this was before explainable AI was actually a thing, a hot topic. And this was our way to show how the decision making of the agent would be presenting new prompts to the policy interview, and then we would look into that and see what was the path, the reasoning behind such decisions, and be able to present that to the trainees so that they can decide what to do in future iterations of the game to better exploit the interviewing context. And after wrapping up this project, we started to look at how can I use this research to actually do AI in games rather than just these serious games. And at the time, we were very focused in L.A. Noire and Mass Effect 3 that were developing nice dialogue systems that were quite different from what we were used to in serious games. And this led me to work in other projects that I'll talk a little bit afterwards. And it also helped me to understand more the compromise between what we do as academics in research projects and also what the industry is actually expecting from our efforts and contributions. And moving, I'd say 4 years, after starting my PhD, I worked in a project called Apex of Fear. It actually started in Malta, where Phil did his PhD with David as well. And it was a project where we were trying to predict and identify measures that would allow us to get to the sweet spot of fear. And as you can imagine, there were also different facets of AI that we use here. We use effective computing with physiological sensors to predict the player phobias and also the emotional state and its arousal. And something happened. I think it's not on my... the arousal of the player. We use eye tracking through the virtual reality headsets, heart rate, respiration, and other sources of information to guide the actual game based on what the player was experiencing. And this was the gist of the product. The project was to create new content in the game that was adapted to the physiological state of the agent. The goal was to find this sweet spot of fears. Somehow, like we tried to convey a good flow in games to guarantee that it was not boring, but it was also not too scary for the players. And finally, one thing that was actually very interesting to me and I was directly involved with was to generate a multiplayer maze in real time based on these states from the multiplayers in the game. So we were able to create different paths in the maze to reduce and to increase the physiological arousal of the player based on their phobias, their position, the state, the enemy's positions, and so on. Then, this was actually my PhD thesis. It was entitled Procedurally Generated Societies, but slowly, as with most theses, we realized it was a large ambition for a 4-year project, and we eventually ended up working mostly on social groups for playable characters. And we focus, before all the data-driven AI was in place, we focus on looking at model-based, using a model-based approach by looking at social-cognitive theories and apply them to these characters in games. And in this particular example, we did a project called Social Craft, where we were able to deploy agents in Minecraft as players using one of the algorithms that we developed, social cognitive frames. And the goal of my entire thesis was more or less to understand what was socially affordable in games and what could players perceive as being social aspects of the interaction in games. So the social affordances that the game would have were one of the first class citizens of this design paradigm that we were trying to employ. And we were looking for a bottom-up approach where the behaviors of individual agents would eventually lead to the creation of social groups. And although it was quite interesting to do that, from some user studies that we conducted, we realized that players were not able to look into the game as we expected them to look. The social attributions they would make to the agents were not as strong as we expected. And indeed, we put the gameplay aspect of the game not as a first-class citizen, and we definitely saw that in the game. So overall, we realized that there was some interesting line of research here, but it did not produce an interesting game in the end. But there was a lot of knowledge produced during this PhD, and this leads me to one of the first key takeaways that I want to share during this brief presentation. So right as I was writing my thesis, there were folks from Google DeepMind and Stanford that started to play with ChatGPT, and they created this world called Smallville. If I recall correctly, the paper is called Generative Agents, where they simulate a town with 25 agents. They all have a context based on prompts, and they would be able to interact with one another, and then we would have a representation, a visual representation of those interactions that were made through text. And it was quite stressful at the time because I was just finishing my thesis and somebody came out with something that worked way better than what I was doing. And thankfully this didn't happen 1 year before. But I slowly started to realize that LLMs and ChatGPT were taking a very important place in game AI. And at the same time, it was difficult to understand what was AI, what was done before. Like in the 90s, there was a winter of AI, and a lot of the techniques developed were not employed as they were portrayed to eventually solve so many different issues. And one of the things that after and now with some perspective, definitely artificial intelligence is not foundation models, it's not LLMs, it's not ChatGPT. This is a subset of what AI is. But this also helped us realize that, yeah, in these times where new technologies came out, when there's a lot of things appearing, not only games somehow pull for new AI, but also these new AI techniques also pushes for new and novel gameplay. And in fact, in the last couple of years, we see that the most innovative games and concepts come from small teams using AI and other technologies to develop good experience that were not able to do before. And yeah, this is the main takeaway that I want to take from most of my research career, like if you can call a 6-year work a career in research. And with the perspective that I have currently of working close with some of our studios in Portugal, the value that as a researcher we can bring to these studios. And I want to talk a little bit about another side of the industry that most people do not really look into. As Philippe was saying, most students that come to the course, they want to be indie developers and they want to develop their own games. But there are a lot to be done in terms of tools and service providers. And with AI, there are multiple ways to empower developers with better tools, better services, better pipelines. So I want to give a brief overview of how AI is changing these tools and service landscape, and in particular, what has been done in Portugal, because we have several companies here that have been working in tools and service provider in service in games, and I think they are worthy to mention. First, we have FRVR. They are a startup going for their Series B. They already raised some dozens of millions. And they develop tech to deploy games in multiple platforms. And recently, they started to work in their new project called Forge, where in a couple of lines, it's like ChatGPT for games end to end. So you write prompts, you can adapt, you can iterate, and in the end, you get a very simple, a very small game that was mainly done through prompts. And of course, it's not as simple as this video tries to convey and what I'm saying. It has multiple facets to the actual product. So first, it helps you bootstrap games using prompts whenever you might be in need of some help trying to fill a blank canvas. Secondly, it allows you to explore ideas and iterate on concepts just by changing some assets, changing some prompts, changing some code, which you can do as well, and allows you to iterate very fast. And finally, it's not just about code and gameplay and mechanics, it's also about asset generation, so it integrates with other libraries that allow you to generate assets, and it gives you a nice editor tool to play a little bit with that. And overall, they aim to provide a solution that works end-to-end from the concept to the actual distribution and monetization of the game. And this is an effort that FRVR are doing here in Lisbon. Secondly, I want to briefly talk about AnyBrain. They are based in Braga. They tackle a problem that most multiplayer games have, which is cheating, game bots, smurfing, and so on. They developed a proprietary technology that is able to detect just based on the interaction between the players and the game if there's a bot, if there's somebody that actually plays way better than what they are in terms of ranks or ladders in the game that they are playing. And they use AI to do this. And they have been doing this for a while. They have been doing this since 2017, if I'm not mistaken. And they have different solutions under their tool set. They have cheat prevention. They only use behavior of the player to detect if they are actually cheating in the game, if they are smurfing, whatever it is. They do not require any sort of kernel level access to the OS to understand if there's some processes or programs being executed in the background. And they are able to create quite fast and quite smoothly new models to detect new cheats in games without a lot of integration effort from the developers themselves. They raised, I think, 2 million in 2022, if I'm not mistaken, and they are growing quite organically right now. Then I want to talk about Opsive. The company itself is not based in Portugal, but the two founders and the working team are living here. They should be here today. I think they will join us afterwards. It's Justin and Sarah. But I also want to bring Opsive because their first product was called Behavior Designer, which was a designer for behavior trees for Unity. It's one of the most downloaded assets in the Unity Asset Store. And again, this was what AI was before all the ChatGPT things. And it worked 100% of the times without needing to change it quite often while the game was already running. And with this said, Opsive has a very good structure to deploy new assets. They have been doing more assets than just the behavior designer. And recently they decided to work on a new tool called Omni Animations, where they generate animations using data sets and adapting them to the actual characters in the game. They are working on it right now. It's a work in progress, but I would like to highlight their efforts because it's quite interesting to see how they can rely on mocap data to create custom and tailor-made animations for different art styles, different aesthetics, while keeping their humanoid rigging as the core of the product. And yeah, they can customize animations. They use trained data that's owned by them, so you should not be afraid of using their animations to release a production-ready game. And finally, they are using something, again, with ChatGPT, as all the products nowadays need to have, AnimateGPT to bootstrap the animation creation process, where you write a prompt, it gets the animation closest to what you want, and then you can iterate on top of that with the other two features of the tool. And next, I'll talk very briefly about my startup and Pedro and Rui startup. So we do video game testing using a no-code solution. It's quite early stage, so we just finished raising some money for our pre-seed round. And the gist of it is we test video games without removing the human from the loop. We record what the humans were doing, we learn from that, and then we are able to create blocks that can test video games. And we are trying to create a solution that does not disrupt the workflows of developers and QA testers. We are trying just to guarantee that whatever they were doing before, and it was quite repetitive and it was not intellectually stimulating, they could avoid doing that, focus on new features, new areas of the game, and increase the test coverage. And we do this by using only kernel level access. So we use raw pixels and input providers, sound, and everything without needing to integrate within the actual game build. And again, we are very early stage. We are exploring several hypotheses, and right now it's going quite well. We are trying to push forward this no-code solution approach to develop new tests, so we can empower a new class of test roles, such as test engineers that can create new flows based on these blocks. And finally, we are also working on generating new test cases based on the previous ones that were recorded from human testers. So this is more or less, I wouldn't say what test waves do, what test waves wants to do. Yeah, and these are 4 companies based in Portugal, or at least with an extensive number of their operations here in Portugal. But why work in AI-driven tools and service providers right now? And looking to the Griffin Gaming Partners and Render Venture Capital survey from last year, where they interview, I think, more than 2,000 employees from game studios, there are some indicators that are cool to look into. The first one is companies, they need to make some decisions where they should buy game technology or they should build game technologies. And whereas 20 years ago, it was a standard for companies to develop their own technologies, nowadays we are seeing a shift within those game studios. So more than 65% of the studios would rather buy game technology rather than building their own game technology. And this happens across studios of different sizes, and particularly in studios with between 50 and 100 employees. So those studios that have already a mid-size team, and they are building stuff that can be close to AA games, they actually are employing more tools developed by third-party suppliers. But also, not only in games, but across most companies, when a company invests $1 in AI, usually they have a return on investment of $3.5. So it's pretty clear, if you want to surf this wave, you should start to think about using AI technologies as native solutions for your infrastructure and your pipelines within your own company. And I just took a look yesterday to the A16Z speedrun program. They are just finishing the 3rd batch, and they released the results from the 1st and 2nd batch. From all the companies that entered in the A16Z accelerator, 25 of those were AI startups, and from those 25 AI startups that work just in games, 60% were tools and service providers. So 40% were games, that studios that were developing games using AI, but a majority of those startups focus on developing tools and service providers. And this highlights how good the time is to try to create a company, a solution that can empower others to develop better games. And this is a second takeaway that I would like you to take home today, is that the new AI tools will shape the industry, definitely. We don't know which ones and how, but they will. And more than 65% of the studios would rather buy these tools rather than building their own. So if you're not into game design, if you do not want to develop your own games or be part of a team that develops games, and you rather address the challenges and the pains of other fellow game developers, there's definitely a path for you to pursue and a career to pursue in developing game AI and tools. And finally, the last one, which is a little bit broad and vague in a sense, is what is the actual impact of AI in games? And it's very hard to tell what's the actual impact using evidence, but I want to mainly answer a little bit the question that's there. Should game developers be afraid of AI in games? I don't think so, but again, the evidence, I don't have enough evidence to support such a claim. I have some numbers that might help you form your own opinion about the issue. Firstly, looking at the same report by Render VC and Griffin Gaming Partners, what are the areas within game development that are most affected and impacted by AI? And this question was presented to employees working in these areas and roles within the companies. And we see that most employees say that definitely all fields will be impacted by AI, and these numbers these percentages are based on the employees that rated them either as first or second area that will be mostly impacted by AI. And this shows that across all different areas, employees see as being affected by AI independently of what they are actually talking about. If it's design of NPCs or game systems, testing in QA, production, studio management, audio creation, game programming, everything. But one other remark that's important, and I think it's a little bit more interesting, is to see when employees believe that AI tools will provide the same value as human employees. And they replied across these 6 different groups: artists, data analysts, producers, QA testers, developers and engineers, and studio management. And 90% of the artists believe that AI tools are already giving the same value as human artists. And as you can see, in other fields it's a little bit lower, but some employees already recognize that those areas are being replaced by AI tools or empowered by AI tools at the same level as what humans could do. And if we increase a little bit the ratio, the duration of how long will it take for AI tools to replace humans or empower humans at the same level, we see that all fields start to believe that in more or less 2 years, we have some employees that believe that AI tools will be more or less bringing the same value as humans. And in the long term, only very scarce people believe that AI tools will not be able to provide the same value as humans. And this eventually was 8+ years. And you can go to the report, it's public. It has a lot more information than the ones that are present here. But overall, what it shows is that the perception from the employees themselves is that AI tools are going to replace or empower them with the same value as other fellow humans. However, this is just the perception. I'm not sure if it's really going to happen and if it's going to be in these time frames. But there's an understanding across the industry that AI tools are doing something to bring as much value or close to as humans do. And this leads me to the last takeaway that I want you to take today, which is definitely AI is already making an impact, and most of these studios, most of the employees in these studios acknowledge that. And particularly artists believe that AI will bring as much value as humans in more or less within 2 years. So this is happening. The fact that if you choose not to adopt these technologies and these tools within studios and within your pipelines is a decision to you, but it will eventually happen for sure. So you better start thinking about how can you use AI to improve your job, to improve your game development skills? How can you also contribute to make better AI that fits your goals? But indeed, this is something that we should be worried about, because I'm not saying that it can remove jobs. I have no evidence to say that, and there's no predictions towards that thesis. But what we can see is that it's going to have an impact. So you better be ready, pay attention, and try to adapt as soon as possible. And these are the 3 takeaways. The first one regarding how can AI be used in games, and how games pull this AI, and how can AI create new and novel gameplay. How can we use tools and services to push for new AI technologies and provide better solutions to more studios, eventually also leading to reducing the costs for the entire industry in terms of adopting AI. And finally, how AI is impacting the actual game development process, and how should game developers address these issues and take into account that and see how they can shift and adapt their careers and their skills to accommodate AI in their daily lives as game developers. And yeah, that's it. Thank you, and feel free to send me a mail. I'll be around to talk, and I think Nuno is now your turn.
Take some questions? Or?
Sure. Yeah.
I think we have time for a couple of questions if anybody wants to give some questions to our keynote. Any questions? No?
Sure.
All right. Okay, so we can go with Nuno. Are you okay? So Nuno, thank you again to Diogo. Thank you. Nuno is also a professor here at Lusófona, teaching mostly programming and AI also in the video games course. So if you want, you can introduce yourself as well. So, thank you. Nun.
Okay, so hi everyone. Little bit of time for the setup. I think everything's working now. So my name is Nuno Fachada. I'm vice director of the video games degree here at Lusofna. I'm also going to be the vice director of the new AI for Games master. So it seems nobody trusts me to be director of anything. It's always vice director. Or maybe I just don't want the work that the director has. Who knows? So I'll make a very brief presentation about the advancements, recent advancements in AI for games. We'll take a quick look at the state of the art of of how AI is actually used in the industry, and it's quite different that some of you might imagine. So I'll be focusing on types of AI for games and the focus of AI for games. And then I'll make an intersection of these two dimensions and give some examples regarding recent commercial games. So talking about, well, but before I go into that slide, just let me tell you, what this presentation is not about. I will not talk about specific AI techniques such as behavior trees or LLMs or whatever. These are some of the things that we will teach in our new masters. So for those of you who want to know about those things, please come to our new masters, which I think you will find very interesting. In any case, we will lecture these things, but we will lecture them to use in context of types of AI for games and their focus. So regarding types of AI for games, we can define 3 types of AI for games. AI that plays, which means we have some bot that plays the game in some capacity. AI that creates, meaning we have some AI systems that create content to be used in the game. And AI that models some property or phenomenon or component of the game. Usually this means modeling the player, but not necessarily. Then let's look at the focus of AI for games. What is it used for? So we can separate it in 2 parts. We can use AI for enhancing the player experience, or we can use AI to focus to help us on game production, meaning that we adapt some AI techniques as part of the game production pipeline, usually improving development speed and reducing complexities that might appear during development. There are some screenshots here as I go on each of these techniques. Here is like the table that does the intersection of the types of AI and its focus. And for each of these, I will give an example of how it's being used in well-known commercial games. So starting with AI that plays for the player experience. We'll start by looking at NPCs. Well, NPCs are probably one of the main things one thinks about when talking about AI for games, at least before LLMs appeared anyway. One good example of the use of NPCs is the recent, 2020 more or less recent Last of Us Part 2 video game, where we have incredible NPCs that are able to take cover, call for assistance, coordinate with each other, and use a combination of sound, sight, and group tactics to challenge the player. One can think of it, okay, this is a complex, interesting, adaptive AI that improves player experience. But on the other side, you have games such as Into the Breach, which use very, very simple AI techniques, in that case, utility AI techniques, that the techniques themselves are simple, but they are used to great effect because they use it to balance the game to such a way to make that specific game, Into the Breach, very challenging, although fair for the player. Then there's a second dimension here, that of the opponents. By opponents, one can also think, but aren't NPCs opponents? Yeah, but in this case, what I mean by opponents is that is some AI that is in play, but has no body or presence, such as typically in strategy games. One recent example is Old World, a game from 2021, in which the AI implements complex diplomacy, military strategies, event-driven decision-making, even the succession of the various rulers and governance decisions, economic and development strategies are all incorporated into this incredibly complex and sophisticated AI systems. The game itself has mixed reviews, but regarding the AI, players tend to think of it as really, really impressive, especially when compared to similar examples such as Civilization and so on. So you can see that opponents here is a little bit different than NPCs. And then, of course, we have AI that plays for the overall experience. The recent video game Resident Evil Village provides a very integrated form of player experience, including enemy adaptation, difficulty adjustment, atmospheric manipulation, and AI-driven narrative elements. Regarding AI that plays for the overall experience, you also have examples, older examples in Alien Isolation and Left 4 Dead, the well-known director from Left 4 Dead 2. Moving on to AI that plays for game production. So what is the usefulness of having a bot that plays during game development? Well, essentially, it's useful for quality assurance and automated game testing. If you have an AI or you have bots that control one or more fake players that explore the world using usually curiosity-driven algorithms to try and find bugs and other issues, and this simplifies the job of the game testers, or if you may also take some jobs of the game testers. Two well-known examples of this using in the industry is the Division 2, in which you have symbolic AI bots that test levels and search for bugs, or a different approach taken by Electronic Arts in games such as Apex Legends and the several battlefields in which they actually use machine learning bots to do the same thing, to test the levels and try and find out and root out bugs. Finally, AI that creates for the player experience. This is usually separated into two components: procedural content generation and real-time rendering. Probably the best well-known example of PCG or procedural content generation is in the Dwarf Fortress game. It's not a recent game, Only recently it has some graphics that are not text-based, but the game itself is at least 20 years old, I think. And in this game, all aspects of the game are procedurally generated. This includes, for example, the landscapes, civilizations, the history of the game, the lore of the game, creatures, underground systems, everything is procedurally generated. It's an incredible work. Unfortunately, the authors don't really share with us the algorithms they use, so one can be left, in terms of research, we would really like to know what he uses because the result is very interesting. Another use of AI creation for the player experience is in real-time rendering, now being used in NVIDIA's DLSS and AMD's FSR up superscaling modes, in which the game is rendered at, for example, full HD. And then with these machine learning techniques, it's upscaled to, for example, 4K with a much less computational weight than rendering natively in 4K, for example. So that is AI being put in use. So for AI creation for game production, there are several facets here, including animation. In animation, you have, for example, the example of the recent Hitman, where AI was used to find blend points in the animation. And of course, the Unreal Engine, which has an incredible component for motion matching in its MetaHuman package. You can also use AI creation techniques for texture upscaling, this time not in real time, but during game production. For example, the recent Mass Effect Legendary Edition was upscaled with the help of AI texture upscaling techniques. For accessibility, for example, you can have AI reading the menus for people that are that can see, or code generation. For example, if the developer wants to test something very quickly, you can ask GitHub Copilot, please do this or do that, just for a quick test of some idea the developer might have. And finally, level gray boxing. Using PCG techniques, we can quickly develop levels that also allow the developers to try out ideas without having the work of creating complete levels. And we have our colleague Diogo Andrade here doing his PhD on exactly this area of level gray boxing. Regarding AI that models some part of the game, let's first look at AI that models something in the game for the purpose of improving the player experience. Online matchmaking is probably the most well-known aspect of this. The idea is to model the skill of the player so that when matchmaking occurs, players of the same level are played together to make the game more fun and engaging. You have examples from Microsoft with the true skill and true match techniques, also proprietary, and Valve, which uses machine learning for matchmaking in Dota 2. Regarding player modeling for the player experience, I would also like to highlight the work of our director, Phil Lopes, in which the idea, Phil Lopes, and now Pedro Fernandes, one of his students, I think Pedro is around there somewhere also, in which player modeling is used for eliciting our experiences. Keeping in the topic of AI that models something in the game, this can also be used for game production, namely the part of player modeling and analytics to understand how players play a game for posterior analysis, reproduction, and eventually improvement of the game. one well-cited case is a bit old, but is still relevant. It's the case of Tomb Raider Underworld, in which the developers tracked in-game behavior and movement patterns and studied how the players interacted with the environment and solved puzzles. And this informed the improvements for posterior games. And of course, player modeling and analytics, as many of you know, is essential for mobile games and monetization. So many of you have heard of this, but this is AI for games. Sometimes we don't associate this with AI for games, but it is. This is also used for detecting cheating in games and toxicity in games. For example, to identify users who use exploits or bots or act in ways that are detrimental to the overall experience. Well-known cases are the Valve machine learning anti-cheat in Counter-Strike Global Offensive. Riot also uses this heavily for League of Legends. And I only added this now due to Diogo's presentation. It seems AnyBrain, the company from Braga, also works on this precise area to detect bots by analyzing player behavior. I'm almost finishing. So what about LLMs? I didn't talk about that. Actually, Phil asked me explicitly, told me don't talk about that. I will only talk about that to say that LLMs are not yet used in production, at least openly. So if you're developing your game, probably it's not a good idea to use them in the game itself. Okay, you might use them for something like GitHub Copilot or having some initial assets to just to test something until you do the proper assets. And why is it not used directly in like generated assets directly in final games? Well, there are lots of issues with stability, especially in conversational LLMs, and lots of issues with legality. As you know, for example, DALL-E and Midjourney and so on, they use a lot of stuff from the internet, and it has been proven that some of that stuff came from artists who didn't give their consent to those assets being used to train the LLMs. So no big company, and hopefully no small company will use generated assets in their final game, because there might be trouble coming ahead due to these legality issues. However, there are some interesting prototypes. I would like to highlight in World's Origins, which launched a demo, I think, last year, in which the player talks directly to the microphone. There is a speech-to-text conversion, then is sent to an internal LLM in the demo, and then the characters, specific characters in the game, respond to you, and they talk to you directly. So you talk with the NPC. It's very interesting. There are some limitations regarding the way NPCs reply to you, because they can't yet convey the part from text to speech conversion is still lacking. They can't convey the emotions properly yet, but the tech demo is very interesting. It's on Steam. You can download it and test it. Behind closed doors, we have Ubisoft's Neo, which apparently is a bit ahead of in-games or in World's Origins demo, which also has some impressive similar techniques in which you directly talk to NPCs. But it is a little bit more convincing, apparently, from what we know from the press. But we don't have access to anything, so we just know what the press, what the reporters that have experimented with this know. So in terms of actually using LLMs directly, it's still early days. Okay. So finally, I'm finished. Thank you very much.
Any questions for Nuno? Tiago. Hello?
Hey, I just wanted to know a little bit more about when you mentioned matchmaking. Since I worked with TrueSkill and more precisely the OpenSkill, the open source implementation of kind of TrueSkill, since what exactly would you consider that it's an AI that models? Because in a sense, it's a Gaussian distribution, right? That just adjusts at the end of the gameplay.
I wouldn't, well, it's proprietary technology. I don't actually, you talk OpenSkill, you said?
Yeah. No, but I worked with both, but since the game was being released on PlayStation, we couldn't use TrueSkill because Microsoft.
Okay, so regarding the TrueSkill and TrueMatch, we don't exactly know what they use. Regarding OpenSkill, if they use a Gaussian distribution, it's a discussion that we will not have here, but it's on the borderline of statistics.
Yeah, it's borderline. Yeah.
Statistics, machine learning,
Data
AI.
science,
So
but
machine
what?
learning is AI. Machine learning is statistics. So when you talk about the Gaussian distribution, is it machine learning? Is it AI? Why not?
Okay.
Okay, machine learning is just fancy statistics. So
Yeah, obviously. Okay,
that's a good question.
thank you.
So, thank you. So we're going to have like a 25-minute coffee break now. So, and we'll come back with the discussions and roundtables. So, see you in about 25 minutes.
You will not defeat me.
In the universe, multiple galaxies coexist. Every single one of them different from one another. But a particular one stands out. In this galaxy, a strange rock, adrift in dark emptiness since the cosmic dawn, landed. As time passed, this peculiar rock started beating and emitting light. It eagers for the energy that only the stars can provide. We call this special galaxy the near side of yonder.
never like never before. Humanity needs a hero. And that hero is you. cannot defeat me.
In the universe, multiple galaxies coexist. Every single one of them different from one another. But a particular one stands out. In this galaxy, a strange rock, adrift in dark emptiness since the cosmic dawn, landed. As time passed, this peculiar rock started beating and emitting light. It eagers for the energy that only the stars can provide. We call this special galaxy the near side of yonder.
Posso começar? Okay, hello everyone. My name is Diogo Andrade. I'm a teacher here at Lusófona, and I've been given the honor of moderating some roundtable panels for discussion with people in the industry, people that actually know what they're talking about, unlike me. So this first roundtable features Edward Kay, the CEO, main developer, big boss at DinoBoss. He is the author of Hangline, and he's currently working on a game that I'm very looking forward to, which is Demon Spore. And we have also Ricardo Sesteiro, the founder at Camel 101. They're known for their first-person horror games mainly, particularly the most recent one, Beneath. Has been getting some good reviews, so check it out. And this is a roundtable on indie development and AI. So just to, the idea of these roundtable panels is to stimulate the discussion. So I'm going to throw some questions around, have them answer, and hopefully you will join in, ask questions, try to figure it out. In this case, basically loosely based on indie development and AI. So to start up, here's your tools. So to start up, we've been seeing lately, that goes without saying, a huge influx of AI developments. But it's interesting that although indie developers would be theoretically the one that had the most to gain, because the budgets are lower, it's not a matter of reducing costs, it's the matter of having or not having something. But we see that most indie developers are very skeptical, very pushing back against the idea of generative AI, particularly in games. So I would like to know, what are your thoughts on this? Why is this happening? Why do you think this is happening? If it's going to change?
Yeah, I think basically no one wants to get sued is the simple answer to that. Yeah, I mean, the legal implications are not known yet, right? So most developers are wanting to be cautious and therefore, not diving into it yet. Approaching it with caution, I would say.
Yeah, exactly. So, of course, there are a lot of very interesting tools that can speed up the process of the development cycle. But yeah, like Edward said, most of these tools, it's not very clear if it's legal, if it's not legal. And aside from the legal implications, there's also the moral implications of what are the sets that these tools are accessing, like the image generators. So I think it's a mix of the legal and the moral issues of using these tools.
But would you say, since you've brought up the moral issues, my perception is that it's regarding indie development, it's mostly about the ethical and the moral, not so much about the legal. This is what I see. Do you believe that the actual, because there is a difference between Twitter indie and actual indie. Twitter indie don't 100% produce games, but real indie does. So is this just a matter of perception about the environment, or do you believe that is it something that you believe in the authorship and content versus art, content versus a product, if I made myself clear?
Well, it's a matter of how we can use these tools. If we
if we completely rely on using AI generators, of course, our project starts to lose its soul, right? So it's a tool that we can use to leverage our output, but I don't think that we can completely replace what we do with AI. So answering your question, even if it would be completely legal and moral, I think we would need to be a bit careful in the amount of work that we do with AI.
Yeah, if we ignore the legal aspects for a moment, I think every indie developer is probably going to have their own opinion and their own stance on it, right? What they believe is correct or not. A lot of developers, myself included, are quite practical. So like, for instance, I use asset packs, like I buy asset packs from the Unity Asset Store. I'm not like kind of, oh, I need to make all the 3D art myself, because like when I started off, I was just one guy, right? So not very practical to make all your own art if you've got a crap ton of other stuff to do as well. So like I'm generally going to pick what is the quickest, easiest thing that I can do that makes me productive. I'm less going to be, this is just personally, but I'm less going to be thinking like, oh, I need to make every single bit of this myself, you know, whatever aspect that is, whether it's music or art or marketing, whatever. So I think every developer will probably have their own stance on it and decide which path they want to take. But yeah, for me, I'm very practical. So, you know, I will use whatever helps me to be more productive, basically, as long as it's not having legal or, let's say, moral implications.
Okay, thank you. Anybody has any questions over there? Please, can I have one of the microphones, please? Thank you.
You're streaming.
Okay, for the streaming. So if I may offer a slightly different perspective, so I'm the CTO at Ludo AI, which is a platform based on generative AI for game design. And I must say that the vast majority of our user base are indie solo devs and indie studios. So I think there is definitely a wide variety of perspectives, but there's definitely a lot of indie devs using generative AI in their projects.
Okay. Anybody else has a comment? The idea here is to open this to discussion.
Okay, so you guys seem to be a bit focused on art AI for generative. How do you use like AI for code development as well, or no?
Not for code development. We use it a bit to polish the text that we write. Sometimes we need to write something in the perspective of a specific character or a situation, and sometimes we use LLMs for that. But for code development or to write code, we've never used it.
I've tried it for code. A friend of mine is working on like a kind of code assistant, but my game was too complicated, and so basically it kind of overloaded it and it didn't work. And also it's too badly written. The code was too badly written because I wrote it. So yeah, I think it's not quite there yet. But yeah, there's probably other tools that do work for it. But so I've explored a lot of things outside of art generation. But most of the time I've found that stuff's not quite where I need it to be. But that's also because I'm really far along, right? I've worked on my game for quite a few years. It's pretty complicated. There's a lot of systems and architecture in place there already, right? So like, I think if I was working on something new, maybe it would be easier to sort of start from that, you know, earlier point with using some AI tools for code generation and other things as well. animation generation as well. But yeah, when you're already a long way through, it's quite hard to suddenly change your production pipeline and to integrate new tools. It's really difficult. So yeah, I'm more about like any cheap, easy wins that I can have to help me get along the finish line. That's what I'll take. But yeah.
Okay, thank you. That was actually like kind of the opinion I share as well. Like I think each project is its own project, and it's always very hard to like have AI come in and do a good job without you having to rectify everything that AI does. So AI in coding, at least, I think it's still a bit behind, and it takes more time than saves when trying to code with AI. So thank you.
Over there, please.
In my case, I have a bit of a counter perspective in terms of the code being always badly written or situations like that. I do use AI in terms of to help code certain solutions, but normally basic things that are really repetitive, and so I optimize my workflow with that. I do check the code, but I do believe it does increase my speed in reaching certain solutions. But in terms of the implications of it and the use of AI from in the developers and anyone else in these industries, I would say that most of the things we see nowadays that come to us as the idea of people are way against it or try to avoid it or things like that come from what has been mentioned as the tweet indies, the Twitter indies that are more after getting visibility and drama and stuff like that that makes their name move around than actually talking about the use of tools and how they actually affect development from start to finish. So I have a question related to that. I understand that you guys are looking against things such as potential lawsuits that might follow due to legal situations, the morality behind it, even though there are more ethical solutions than others out there. Do you guys still see it as something that could eventually come to be part of your pipeline, your day-to-day as things go move forward, like as we progress through time and technology evolves? Are you guys looking into putting some of those solutions into your workflow as things go on, or for now you're not even thinking about that as a potential thing?
For this project, probably not. But moving on into the future, like I'm sure I will be using AI tools. I think most people probably will, because it's in my view, it's kind of an inevitability. If something helps you to be a lot more productive, then it's kind of business sense that you'll end up using it. Providing that there aren't strong moral or legal issues, right? I mean, from my perspective, like I think there's probably a lot of tools that aren't really there yet, which could be really amazing in terms of like using I've seen some things where you kind of like sketch out, say, a level layout, and then the tool can kind of auto build that for you. So something like I could imagine tools that are more tailored to your exact game that you're working on, rather than just generically helping you code or generating some art assets. Like there could be stuff that helps you generate narrative or branching narrative or actual level designs and things that are very specific to your game. And so I could totally imagine using stuff like that. I mean, personally, like I want to be creative and I want to be productive, but if there's things there that need to be built for the game that I don't necessarily have to build myself, then yeah, I would definitely use AI for it personally.
Yeah, the same thing. So as I said, right now the legal things are not very clear, but I believe once everything starts to be more clear and the tools start to use legal data sets. I don't see why not. I don't see these tools as something that can replace our work, but as something that can speed up and increase our output. So in the end, it's a tool. It's a better tool that can enable us to do more and do better. So I don't have any issues against using it in the future. So yeah, I think we will use it even more in the future.
The question I want to ask is, now we are talking about using AI for productivity, but the question is, I want to talk is, how is going to affect the market itself? Because since AI help us use creating things such as art, assets, and code, wouldn't be a rise of solo indie game devs or more indie games, and if that the quality will be increasing or decreasing with the AI?
Yeah, I think there's going to be a lot of different impacts. I would agree. I think there's probably going to be more solo devs because it'll just be easier to create a game. I think it's already got easier to make games for the past, 10 years in particular, right? Like Unity and Unreal, being big drivers of that, as well as a lot of other tools, right? If you just ignore AI, just the tool landscape is so much better than what it was, right? That's already meant that so many more games get created, right? I think AI is only going to push that a lot further. And so in some ways that's positive, right? Because people that probably couldn't afford to make a game before because they simply couldn't budget for that much time will be able to make games more easily because they'll be able to use AI to help them build it faster, right? The downside is going to be, in my opinion, there'll be so many games out there that discoverability will be even harder, and it's already one of the hardest things, if not the hardest thing, as a small developer. So that's kind of a scary thing in a lot of ways, probably for most people. With AAA and like the bigger studios, I think probably a benefit will be they'll simply be smaller teams because you'll need less people to build something. Instead of like these giant projects with like 1,000 people, you might have like a few hundred instead, which is still huge. But I think that's a positive thing because then it just means that there'll be better communication between people, and people will have to do less of the kind of mind-numbing jobs you have to do in building a huge game. So I think there's positives too. But in general, I think there's just going to be a heck of a lot more games, and that might not necessarily be a great thing for everybody. So.
I think there will probably be more games. About the quality, I don't know, because again, these are only the tools that a developer uses to make a game. So if the developer doesn't know what he's doing, if he's not experienced, he's just using a fancy tool to create art or code or whatever. So I think, there will probably be an explosion of solo devs. It will impact discoverability, but I don't know. It's something that already happens with the asset packs and the asset flips. So I don't know. We'll see. I'm not very worried about it, to be honest.
Okay, there's more questions.
So while personally I do agree that the best use of AI, specifically generative AI, is to increase production speed and to help both artists, programmers with their workflow. A lot of people in higher up studios, for example, aren't of the same opinion, like what happened in Hollywood, for example, with the Writers Guild. So how do you feel we can make our place in the industry and make the people in higher up positions see that we do still have value, even if we can speed things up, we speed our work up using AI instead of using it to replace us?
Well, I can't speak for AAA studios because the mindset is completely different from a small indie developer. But I think that if a project is solely based on generative stuff, it's going to be generic. I think a movie or a game or whatever is going to lose its soul, and it's not going to leave a mark in the industry. Now, of course, the higher ups are only interested in the profit, of course. So I don't know, but I don't know. We'll see, but I don't think that something completely generic can be as good as something that has the human touch, of course. So I think time will tell what's going to happen.
Yeah, I think in terms of like people being replaced or people losing their jobs, I think it'll be more a case of adapting to new tools and technology. Like I think, you know, for instance, if your job is to write a script, I doubt you're going to be replaced by someone higher up from you just going, oh, I'll just press the write script button with a prompt, right? It's probably going to be more like you'll use it as a tool to help you write faster and generate ideas and generate stuff that you can then edit and tweak and train your own model that works and learns how you like to write and what your style is. I think it's more that kind of thing, and not just with writing, but with most stuff, at least. You know, we're talking about a lot of different tools and a lot of different areas here, but on the whole, I see it more as being a transitional thing where people will adopt AI tools gradually more and more to help them, you know, do whatever job they're doing more effectively. But for sure, there will be some people that lose their jobs. It's just inevitable, or rather than lose it, perhaps transition to something else just because you'll need less people to build a game. That's I think undeniable what will happen. But yeah, it's just, I think it's all about how fast things happen and how well those transitions are managed, really. But it will be different for sure.
Okay, that's all the time we have for this table. Thank you very much to our guests, Edward Kay, Ricardo Sesteiro. We're going to start the roundtable on generative AI next. Thank you very much. Carlos Martinho, next. Okay, so we're going to start our second roundtable for today regarding generative AI and adjacent topics. With us, I have Tiago Loureiro, which is the current technical director for Coco. We have Jorge Gomes, who is the founder and CTO at Ludo AI, company creating software, AI-driven software for game design. And we have Carlos Martinho from the Instituto Superior Técnico. So I'm going to start with an easy one, which is, do you currently there's this big, not only usability push for LLMs and that kind of large-scale models. But also there's a marketing push from companies all over the place talking about how their model is bigger than the one that came before. So my question is, do you feel that there is still room for non-neural network related research in the current LLM boom? And if so, do you believe it can be better than LLMs? So I don't know who wants to start.
Yes, I'll start. Hey, so yeah, definitely. Next question. No, okay.
I do believe it's better.
So the reason why, well, agents, aka NPCs for muggles, still need to walk around game worlds. People still need to take split decision decisions, and things still have to work in real time. So definitely, there's plenty of margin for symbolic AI, for non-ML related. So I think that there's a reason why we are currently going through this new generative and ML-powered wave of new developments and research and all that. But at the same time, I mean, we've been doing cool shit since the 90s. Well, and people have been doing some cool shit since the 70s. If you think about the perceptron that was built on the 40s, so that's even something like crazy, right? So yeah, there's plenty of margin for that. So problems that I have to deal with on my day-to-day basis, how to create teams of agents and have them have their own intrinsic distinct behaviors and how they can all cooperate towards a common goal. There are plenty of ways of achieving that goal, or there are plenty of strategies for that. Better ways for navigating complex 3D space if we know about the world, or if we don't know about the world. I think there's so many cool things that we can do that don't require LLM. So yeah, plenty of margin for that.
Totally. So people need to remind that AI already existed a long time before LLMs appeared, right? The concept of AI in software exists at least since Alan Turing. And as he said, a lot of cool shit has been done with AI. So, and there will be something after the LLMs. We don't know yet what it will be in terms of the technology that will exist, but we do know that the current technology, mostly based on LLMs and transformer models, has limitations, has very strong limitations, and those limitations will not be solved by bigger models, by training with more data. They are design limitations. So there will definitely be a next architecture, new capabilities coming on. Nobody really knows what they will look like at the moment. We do know that there are big groups such as Meta AI working on them, and time will tell what they will look like. But in present, there is definitely still space for a lot of things outside the LLM space, because as I said, LLMs, despite what you might read on Twitter, they can't do everything. They have very strong limitations, and there is definitely room for this kind of AI agents that can plan, that can reason, that can do these other tasks that are often needed even in games.
Okay, so there's a field of research called computational creativity. And if you look into this field, you will see that they're not only doing LLMs, and they've been studying how to create AI that is able actually to generate something that will be considered creative, right? And this is not an easy task, and it raises a lot of questions, not to mention that what is creative, right? And I assume the question about generative AI is in the sense of creating something, right? A piece of art, a video game that will be deemed creative and worth my time, because that was already discussed before. And as we have a flood of new alternatives, There will be more competition for what is really worth to grab my attention and the time I will spend, and with games actually we're not in the 80s where we will play for 5 to 10 minutes, right? Usually we expect games to be hundreds of hours, and to generate creative content that is consistent across those hundreds of hours is not trivial. But what I wanted to say is to reinforce the idea that, of course, this is not the tool, and right now it's the tool that we may have less control over, and this always has been an issue. So if the designer don't want to lose control over what they do. They don't want the AI to go berserk during a game and something real bad happen. So how far are you really sure? And this is not clear, right? We're still trying to think what this technology will bring in terms of all the issues. So that's why companies are really, the risk is high right now. There's, besides the question that was raised regarding the legal issues, you have ethical issues, right? And you have those, are those tools, relevant when my game will be patched in 2 months? Do I have to train everything again, right? How do you create AI that will adapt to what is the cycle that is required by a game, right? We want to change the meta. The meta cannot be stalled, so no one will play my game. We want to change balancing, so it's still interesting. How does AI react and adapt to that? And those are questions that are open, and if you have the time and will, there's a lot of money probably to be done in this point. But one thing is happening for sure with LLMs. It's being a democratization of what was, for a long time something that was, if you don't have the skill, you cannot even try it, right? And this happened before, right? When you have the first, when you have the first drum kits. Right? People say we don't need drummers anymore. Of course, this raised the bar, right? But we still have drummers in bands. They didn't disappear, right? So we just have to figure out how this tool can be used. But one interesting thing for me is to see, people that were not interested in game design and on creative art or things like that, to actually are brought into this field, and they try to print their T-shirt, right? The T-shirt, they just, use generative AI to create, and they have some ideas, they help. And I think the future will be more about understanding how we as humans can co-create things with the machine, more than, we'll wait for the technology to be there so I can use it when it's safe and, worthwhile using it. Sorry if I started rambling a bit, but.
That's the point. That's the whole point. Any questions so far? There's one over there. Can I have one of the mics, please? Thank you.
You speak about one approach versus another one. LLMs versus, true AI decision making. Might be oversimplifying, but the way I perceive the human brain is that it's kind of like 3 components working in conjunction. There's one central, like low-level emotional system that kind of is your driver. Then you have this decision-making section, and then memory is essentially a LLM, right? The more you learn, the more it's like a statistical model that you kind of refer to. Well, this happened, and when I did this happened, and the other time. So you kind of use that as a balancing. So do you not think that maybe the future isn't about one solution, but maybe one base solution and then other solutions implemented over and kind of leveraging a lower level solution? So maybe what you mentioned as the kind of a higher level decision-making system is based on an underlying larger model. Do you think that the future might be more a hybrid like this?
Was this directed to someone in particular? You. I don't remember talking about this top-down decision making.
No. You mentioned one and then another, and I was kind of asking.
I totally agree that the way we still think we have to understand what each technique is good for, and not expect that one will win them all, right? And understand how they can synergize in a way that will be not only good but efficient. We're making games that we want to have more AI. By the GPU is being used for the graphics, and this is an ongoing issue. And you have this principle that there will never be enough, computing power to do whatever you want. So I totally agree. You have to think of what to prioritize, right? You can actually remove the graphics and things like that. But one thing I've learned is that mainly in terms of machine learning, you still need something to base yourself on, right? So for instance, I taught a course on computer graphics, and one of my students in one of the classes, they just came to me and said, look, you're teaching computer graphics, but this is going away, right? Because now everything is, with the LSS, you don't need anything, you just use AI. Yeah, but they forget that it was trained on something, right? And you need what the basis to train that on. And so I don't think it will replace other systems that we have. It just build on them and make them more accessible for everyone. It's again, my feeling with LLMs is more about this democratization. Everything is more accessible. I don't need to have a PhD degree to interact with an AI. And I think this is a big step. It makes it more accessible. People will try, they like some things, they don't like other. And we have all this regulation going on to help people, right? So the EU AI Act, right, is on us, right? We have all those things, but I don't see OpenAI moving away. So I assume there will be some kind of compromise. We had GDPR, we're still here, right? We said, oh no, we cannot, record game data from our players. We still do it, right? So we just do it in a different way, in a more transparent way. And I think this is positive, right? But going back to your question, I think again, it's not one size fits all. There will be a lot of effort of people using this technology, which is essentially using language to try to map onto others, right? And you have these expert models, right? Which work fine because they have this glue that connects them together in a way that makes sense and that everyone can use.
Thank you. One last question for the gentleman in the middle. You mentioned that there's limitations to LLMs, right? And one, I think you mentioned, which was lack of control. But what are, in your opinion, the top 3 limitations of LLMs?
So you were talking about the human brain and kind of almost giving a parallel to LLMs, and like, despite what some people might think, LLMs and transformer models do not work like brains. They are both neural networks in theory, but they work in very different ways. Like LLMs totally lack the ability of planning. They cannot plan. The only thing that LLMs output is the next token, the next word. That's as far as the planning goes. So in human terms, that would be like a human that can never think before talking. We do think. We have an internal monologue that we think before we say things, we plan. And that's probably the #1 limitation of LLMs and transformer models in general, is that they simply don't have the ability to plan.
I wasn't saying that human brains are like LLMs. What I was implying is that a part of the human brain might be similar to LLMs, but it's being operated by maybe a decision-making part. But I might be wrong. This is an assumption.
Yeah, it's a very loose, a very loose abstraction maybe. But yeah, so human brains work in very different ways to the neural networks that we have in computers.
Thank you.
Okay, I have one. All 3 of you mentioned creativity in your various answers in different contexts, and that has been kind of one of the weapons, let's call it like that, that's been used to attack generative AI. The fact that it cannot create something new, blah, blah, blah. So that's one of the arguments, which in turn gets thrown back as using different definitions of the word creativity and things like that. So I would like to know your opinions on creativity. What, for you, constitutes creativity, and why can/can't generative models be capable of it?
Okay. So generative models have a special form of creativity, let's say so, where their creativity comes from the ability of interpolating between the knowledges that between the concepts that they already know and extrapolating based on them. And I would say that's definitely a form of creativity. I mean, people go to school, they learn a lot of curricula, a lot of stuff, and then create new stuff based on what they learned. So that's a form of creativity. You could argue that another form of creativity would be creating something totally new that's outside the framework of the existing concepts of the existing, talking about specifics of games, like creating a game mechanic that is totally new, that is just out there, totally unrelated to what you have now. But like, that's not what happens most of the times, is it? Most of the times people create things that are somehow related with what already exists. They are combinations, they are extrapolations. And artificial intelligence models can indeed do that.
I would just like to give an example of how things work and the outcomes that we can expect. So like, I'm going to pick two examples, the very popular examples nowadays. A GAN, generative adversarial network. It's kind of like a very demanding parent, like, draw me a tree, and you produce a tree. This is not a tree, draw me another tree, until you actually come up with a tree. Whereas a denoising, diffusing model could be like a teacher giving you a very abstract drawing and say, make a tree out of it. So it's the whole creation part is a bit like, as humans, we still don't know what creation is, right? That's the whole underlying concept that no one can create anything really new because we are very much inspired, and therefore our knowledge is very biased by everything that we have experienced. It's pretty much the same with a machine, right? Or with an algorithm. It kind of relies on the data sets, on the model, on parameters, weights, whatever we want to call it. It relies a lot on the knowledge that was passed by whomever built it. And therefore, when we want to talk about creation and creativity and what is that exactly, yeah, you can go to Midjourney and do a lot of very interesting art pieces. Some of them even won art contests. But yeah, but was it really original? No, but has someone actually produced something really original? I don't know. I don't know what to answer that. That's a more philosophical debate. That's why we need more philosophers nowadays to think about these problems, because now we have a lot of tangent areas that have sprung out of our emerging tech developments that we need people to think a lot about them and not just use them, right?
As the academic here, I have to bring definitions. So actually, I'm not saying that's the absolute truth, but there's, of course, this definition has been mainly in the field that I mentioned. Actually, what is creativity? So if we want to create computers that are creative, what should be this goal, right? And Margaret Bowden, who is actually outside from the field of computer science, was one of the big proponents of creativity, and she defined creativity as something that is novel and that values in a certain context, right? It's not novel because it's novel, it has also value. And she defines a lot of ways that creativity can happen. We can bring two things together and mix them, which is essentially what is happening mostly of the time, but they can be also transformational, which means we can create things that are outside the scope. Suddenly we see things from a different perspective. It's much harder for computers to do that, right? But computers are very good at combining things and finding things we never thought of. So computers are good at certain aspects of creativity, humans are good at others. And again, it brings back to me this idea of co-creation. I think human and the computer are, a powerful tool that's still trying to find how to use best. And when we talk about what is creativity, more important suddenly is how do we evaluate it, right? So how do you see something as creative and how do you evaluate it? Of course, there are fields that, art critic, probably you have some courses about that, where how do you evaluate art, or how do you know, right, the value? And this is a totally different aspect, and there are a lot, right, a lot of directions to go in this. But one thing I want to bring in games is that creativity is very, for me, is very ingrained in game making itself, in the sense that I mean, this may be too broadening, but I would argue that as a game designer, you want to make the user feel creative. At some point, you want the user to feel, ha-ha, right? And you have this ha-ha moment in the game. And essentially, it's making an association, not necessarily the first time. No, it's not historical creativity in the sense no one had this association before, because as the designer, you program it, right? You designed it. But you led the player to this moment where the player feels creative. And I think this approach on what is creativity for games in terms of the player experience may be as important as defining what if a game as a whole is creative or not, because we're designing the game, hopefully, for the players, rather than for the game being, an artifact by itself. We can have this discussion later. But I think that there is this third approach on what creativity means for games that is very little discussed, and I think would also stand the need for inquiry and how AI can actually help with creating those haha moments that we want the players to feel in the game.
Okay. Hello. Sorry to bring analog games, but I cannot avoid it. Some games now, analog games are mainly multiplayer games, but some of them are using solo modes at the moment. And they are creating solo modes based on NPCs. And some of these modes are called AI. They call them specifically AI in the rule books, and they say, and they show us in a rule book written how to manage and control and define this AI that will replicate another players, that will react to it. My question is this a way, from an educational perspective, a way to train students and a way to approach AI from a very simple way to introduce it, to train it, and to learn from it, and then can transform it into something digital and useful for video games?
Okay.
I'm not sure where you want to go with this question, but of course there's a big history, right? And the report, I think there's one or two books on that about how, paper AI has been used in the past to control games, opponents and things like that. And it has been used actually to teach, algorithms, although it really gets, complex in the sense of bookkeeping, right? One of the big difference in terms of, when you look at an analog game that is not an hybrid game, that has no support whatsoever, it needs to be easy to bookkeep to a certain degree, to the degree that the players will be okay to accept. Okay, I want more simulation, I'm fine with, having more 15 minutes between turns, making my bookkeeping. So what this can be, teaching is actually sometimes seen as something that can be deterring, in the sense that something that will be easy to do by an AI has to be done, by hand, changing, small bits from one part to another to have the same effect, and it could be interesting to understand it. But what the digital side brings is more of this. You can have, more complex simulations that can support or help. And that you don't need to trace, step by step. I'm not sure that's where you wanted to take, but of course it's a good teaching tool. But you will be limited to very simple scenarios that are not the actual scenario you will use in game. That will require much more, bookkeeping to be of use. Oh, sure. Sure, definitely.
Let me show you my example, my life story example. So I started working in games on the Quake 2 engine. So it's been a while. And back then, I was doing kind of machine vision and adaptation hybrid with a very neat symbolic approach to it. And back then, game engines were so rudimentary compared to what they are nowadays that you have to build all the tools yourself. There was absolutely no knowledge of the world. So the way that I was working with it was like I was doing, I was processing the visual output to be able to have some knowledge about the game world so that then I could take decisions based on the agent's knowledge of the world. Nowadays, you have things like in Unreal, like EQS, that you can have that for granted. You have the ability of do really interesting things that will take you to the same place and that will teach you the same things, but require less work and less effort. But you still are able to teach those same principles, but with, more advanced technology. All this to say that those things are really important in the sense that you're able to teach folks about the importance of decision-making. How do you take decisions? How do you prioritize actions? And I think that's really very important when you're trying to convey the idea of real-time decision-making to students, for instance. Because everything else, like ML, is a completely different beast from everything that you usually learn. It's a lot of statistics, a lot of distribution, a lot of math. And it will be something that will solve some problems and that you really need to know where you want to go to get there, sort of.
I just want to add something if it's possible, because I mean maybe I sounded too negative, and I want just to bring an example that actually maybe it's not as negative. So for instance, last time I went to Lady Econ, which you know very well, I bought Azul, which I never had played before, maybe because the designer was there, I don't know. And I went home, right? And Azul does the solo play is very different. And you go online on Board Game Geek, and you actually see that people have come out with, those paper AI. They are totally different, right? You look at the most, I did that at the time, just I want to learn the game before, losing desperately to everyone, so let me try to learn. But actually, the solo play is totally different from the multiplayer. But it's actually interesting because by doing this, and you will not recognize one from the other because they are two different games, you actually could learn more about the game. So actually by going through I need to have something which model is simple enough so I can be using it on paper. Maybe I can learn a bit more about what the game is, or maybe, have an idea for the next expansion.
Okay, thank you very much.
I just forgot something. I think it could be interesting. Like when Game of Life started, people were more worried about, hey, I get this really neat configuration if I start with this other configuration rather than evolutionary algorithms and stuff. So I think the exploration about the simple stuff usually takes you a long way. Sorry.
Okay, thank you very much. So that's all the time we have for this panel. So stay tuned for the next one. Thank you very much to all our guests.
I was the only one who was warned about this.
I'll try my best. Okay, so welcome to the third panel of this morning. This one will excite you all, I'm pretty sure, about ethical AI. It's a bit about ethical AI and AI in education. So both topics that are very dear to me. So with us we have Diogo Rato, which is, as we've seen before, did an excellent keynote from TestWave. We have David Melhart from the Institute of Digital Games at the University of Malta. We have João Dias from IAD, and Fausto Murato from the Instituto Politécnico de Setúbal. So let's start again easy, which is many believe that the AI revolution is just a way for companies to reduce costs by mainly firing people. So, of course, this is mainstream talking points like I was on Fox News, but still it's an interesting thought, and I'm pretty sure that a lot of students here are worried about that. So I would like to know if that's something that is worrying you, if it's something that while you're doing your research and your work, it's something that's on your mind, this sort of issue. So,
I think it's a genuine concern, and I feel like all of these kind of like technological advances so far had the sort of like potential of leaving people behind. And what we see is usually marginalized people and marginalized communities are the first ones to be hit by any kind of like disruption. So I feel like we as an industry sort of like have to take some sort of like responsibility and figure out ways to make the AI revolution sustainable, because there's like on one side we have like a human cost to this, right? Like people whose sort of like literal livelihoods can be taken away, right? Like as we saw that many of the artists already fearing for, like literally for their lives sometimes, because AI companies, without any rhyme or reason, just take their art and turn it into data sets without their consent. And basically, then they are left to compete against these big AI models. But on the other side, it is also like in the business interest to create create systems where we will have artists in the future, so we can build new AI models based on them, right? So there's this kind of like, if we cut out all the sort of like training level jobs, we also cut out the training for AI, right? So I think there is a definite like fear in this, and there, as we talked about it here multiple times, I feel that there will always be like a space for people to do stuff, but I fear that what the AI revolution might do is make positions like art in AI very elitist, because people won't have the positions to learn the tools of the trade. So only people who are privileged enough so they can spend time on this without getting paid will be the only ones who then become like, I don't know, art directors, for example. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with almost everything that David said. Again, I think as a society, when we keep evolving these tools that can definitely take out some people from the places where they currently work, there's a need for companies and everybody to get involved and try to figure out a solution that can help people get their jobs back, have a living, make a living out of doing games as they were doing before. And for instance, on our case at TestWaves, one of the things that we were always concerned was trying to give a tool that can actually help human testers do more productive stuff. But at the same time, we acknowledge that QA jobs, usually it's the first step into the industry for most game developers. It's an easy way to get into the industry and to get to know how the industry works and then eventually evolve to other roles. So we also assume that there might need to be some policies and some way to guarantee that there's still an entry point for young graduates, for young game developers to actually evolve within the industry. And I think, again, as David said, we still need people to produce the data that will then train the models that we're going to use to take out people from their jobs. And this is a feedback loop that goes on and on. We can use synthetic data, but again, games, it's an interactive medium made for players. We need to know how humans interact with that artifact. So we need to collect the data to create these AI models. However, not all data sets can be, as Carlos said in the previous panel, not all data sets can be collected and used in a legal way. So we need also to guarantee that we, as companies that are using AI to speed up the process, to reduce costs, to be more efficient, not only through production, but also in all other roles and tasks associated with game development, we also create the possibility for collecting these data and generate data sets from humans that perhaps would lose their jobs throughout our technology. And again, there are several concerns, and we started with the educational aspect of AI in games as the motto for the panel. But I think it's like we do not want to have a similar cycle to what we had with Web3, where nobody was actually Web3 and crypto. They might have worked if society would have reduced the speed on adopting everything. And at the time, people with money were buying crypto and investing in the metaverse, whatever it is, and it did not yield the results that everybody was expecting. But now we are talking about people that will start to adopt AI, and jobs will be taken out of the market. People will lose their jobs, will not have a way to provide for their families. So we need to think it more carefully and perhaps do not take it as fast as we did with previous technologies.
Okay, hello. Perhaps I'm going to do a disclaimer, because probably my opinion is not the opinion from the higher standards and the other professors at YAD, okay? Because I also manage a company, so I have the two sides. So in my opinion, you don't need to be afraid of AI, okay? You just need to adapt the way that you work, okay? Because imagine, a couple of years ago, when in the construction area they introduced machines, people start to think about, okay, so we are going to lose our work. But no, they just need to adapt the way they work with the machines, okay? And actually, in the construction field, for example, you have a lack of people to work, okay? So probably this is what is going to happen to us, okay? Probably in 20 or 30 years from today, we are going to have some fields where we need to have more people work at that, okay? And actually, I encourage my students to use AI, okay? And me as a professor, I also use AI, okay? Perhaps to say something like this, okay, how can I give computer networks without having my entire class to fall asleep, okay? So without presenting 300 slides with definitions and that kind of things, okay? So in my opinion, we should look at AI as a tool that can help us to, I'm going to say, work fast, work better, and perhaps reach a point where we can do greater work than without AI. So that is my opinion. Perhaps my colleagues at YAD are not going to agree with me, but that's my opinion.
On this panel, opinions are from every person himself.
Okay, so I'm starting to agree with your opinion. So I think that you, as students from computer development, from game development degrees and something like that, you don't have to be worried and afraid of what's coming up and what you are, if you are not getting a job later or something like that. There will be space for many people, and for each role that shrinks, another or more roles will appear. So you don't have to be afraid, you should be aware of the opportunities, and you have to identify yourself and think where you can fit and where you can give your contribution to the game development. As it happened before, when we started to have engines, when we started to have some technologies and additional tools, you have to understand how to use them and how to give your personal touch and how to give your contribution. And as long as you can give your contribution, there's something that's yours and that you brought to the projects, then you are an asset of that project. So there's space for you.
Any questions? I have some follow-up. If not, sorry.
May I just add something in the meantime, very fast? I think we all agree that AI is a tool and empowers people to do other stuff, even if worth or better than before. I think the question is about the pace that we adopt the tools, because if we do it too fast, and it seems like we might be able to do that in the upcoming years, we might not be able to provide jobs at the same pace that suffice the needs of people that went unemployed. And I think this is the question. It's not about if it's going to be good or bad. It's about during that period where we need to transition between using it or not using it, will there be enough space for everybody to make money and live out of it? I think that's the biggest question. And as David said, perhaps we as the ones promoting the use of these tools, we are also reducing costs from the companies. We are earning some money out of it. We need to give back in a similar fashion. And yeah, I would just like to stress out that, at least for me, that's the concern that you usually have when thinking about how it can affect people, game developers, whoever it is, whenever looking at the societal challenges of using AI, because it just speeds up the process. Like, it's a different speed, it's a different rate that what we were used before. Like using the construction reference, the digitalization, everything, it definitely speeded it up, but we had enough time at least to do it between generations. It was not happening from 1 year to another. Like, we had a little bit more time. And we are paying that cost now. Like, we have no construction workers, for instance, in Portugal. But there might be policies that at least could allow us to somehow look into the problem, figure out the solution with time and with planning. Yeah.
Okay, so do you have your question?
I once had a guy working on Far Cry making rocks for 2 years. He made thousands of rocks. By the end, he was dreaming about rocks. I don't wish that on anybody. So I think that AI will provide the ability of maybe building data sets, create a couple, create a few, teach, and then have it. Then that person could, move on to something else that maybe we didn't have time to do. But even beyond that, taking it one step beyond that, if you look at films, cinematographers especially and production designers, they spent their careers trying to make reality not look like reality, not look generic. And we've been focused on trying to make every freaking game look like reality. So imagine just the world opening up to artists being able to create a unique chair, table, and then teach the data set now to create that style and then populate the world with it. So it's not a question of oh my God, no more jobs. It's a question of being able to do all the stuff that we couldn't do before because we didn't have the time, the number of people. So I think that, and I just turning it into a question, is that I think that this requires also a shift in education in the way that you teach people to become superhuman with AI. Like, how does an artist become more than an artist by leveraging AI? And I guess, is this something that you think about in the way that you envision the future of teaching the next generation, so that they're not just artists, that they are, and I'm using artists, but it could be writers, it could be anything, that can be more than that by leveraging this amazing tool?
If I could just pile on to this question, because I'm very interested in this particular topic, is since we're talking about how to educate future generations on how to converge AI and people, so co-creation. How can we address the issues that we face nowadays as professors, while teaching students when they can just go to ChatGPT and ask for the solution for everything we provide? So, take it away, please.
Yeah. So I think, yeah, I feel like I came in very strong with the doom and gloom, and I think like none of us sort of like doubts that AI can be a very powerful tool and it can enable a lot of things. My fear, and I think this is a fear I share with Diego, that I see this kind of like super eagerness from big tech companies and also like some parts of the tech startup world to exploit this AI revolution as fast as possible. And I just see the glee in some people's eyes when they can push people out of their jobs to cut costs. And I think this is, two different questions. Like one is like, what can we do with AI as a tool to enhance how we work, how we can cut out like boring jobs and make the creative process, for example, more engaging, which AI can do, I believe. But there's also this kind of like side of this, like this kind of insidious side of this, when people come in and they're not interested in the technology part of this. They're not interested if this enables something. They're interested in, will this cut my costs? And they don't care about the human cost of cutting costs.
You're right, because there's the difference between right now AI is focused on pressing like a lemon the creative juice that all these artists built for past decades, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Instead of being focused on how to leverage current artists to create models, to create novelty, right? Which is very, very different. But you're right. Right now, the fastest path is just, well, we have all this stuff, let's just steal it and just like move faster and leverage that, which I think is the wrong approach.
And we need sort of like this kind of like mind shift sort of industry-wise towards what you are saying, that how we can use this in a sustainable way, and sustainable in a way that will create more jobs, will enable more people to be more creative, instead of just like, as you say, squeezing, which is what I see at least now in large part of the industry. And to answer the other question about like technology, like how we teach technology, I feel what we have to teach is sort of like a mindset. Like there's like a lot of stuff that is changing in terms of technologies, in terms of like new frameworks, new libraries. And I think this is just like speeding up. So what we can teach to students is sort of like the mindset of how to organize themselves, how to analyze the problems that they face and how they can reframe these. And, then it doesn't matter how they do it. And I feel like this kind of like ChatGPT stuff is like, when I have a student who comes in and have something that is written by ChatGPT, I will figure out very fast. Because if I ask them questions about like, how does this thing work? Like, what is this thing? If they can't answer it, I know that they don't understand what they are doing. And I think what we should teach them is to understand why something is being done. And then obviously, if they can automate parts, automate away.
I don't have students right now. I'm not teaching any courses, but I can share two thoughts. One, picking up on what David said, like what we should be teaching students, and not only students, everybody, it's having a critical mind, try to reason about problems and look at the tools and what they actually produce. Like we have been teaching people to do this for many generations, do their due diligence, fact checking, everything. It's on our daily lives, and we can do that the same way with software. We cannot take it for granted that it's just working and can actually bring some value. We need to figure it out, because if everybody can use this software to create games, everybody can use this software to create more software. And perhaps it's not rooted in an actual good motivation. On the other hand, I think, again, with all these tools, it's not that we are suffering from a lot of unemployment, but whenever we look at to upskilling older generations and people that are not as familiar as young graduates and people that just came out of uni with these tools, we can also fasten up the process of them being integrated in companies, in opportunities that were not open before, because it would take them a lot of time to learn new skills like programming, sculpting, modeling, whatsoever. And right now, using these tools, we can make sure that these guys will be doing something that's meaningful, that's not boring or intellectually sad, working in rocks for 2 years, and they can figure out a way to be valuable not only for themselves as a person, but also for the industry as a member of a corporation or a development studio that actually produces something to entertain others. And again, as Alexander said, and David, if we keep squeezing what we were doing in the previous years, we are not going to innovate. Like, it's going to be the same thing over and over and over again. And as any other creative industries, we do not need the same stuff over and over and over again.
Okay, in this I have to agree with David. Okay, I think we as a professors, we also need to adapt the way we are teaching. Okay, so I'm going to give an example. Last week, I had a student that the main goal of the class is to develop a program to populate an array. Okay, and basically, what my student was he basically do this. ChatGPT, okay, write me a piece of code to do this. Okay, and if the main goal of the class or the exercise is only to have the right answer, okay, he managed. But at that time, I look at him and said, okay, now adapt your code, just calculate the average of values or something without using the machine. Let's put this on paper, okay? And basically, he was stuck for 20 minutes, okay, until I get out of patience. Said, okay, let's start from the beginning, okay? So with this, what I want to say is perhaps we need to start teaching in a different way, also for you to use AI and adapt the use of AI to acquire new skills, okay? So I think that should be our goal as a professors, okay? Because usually when we try to say to our students something like this, okay, AI is forbidden. So as soon as we leave the desk, they are going to start using AI. Okay, you love, we love. Okay, as remembering when I was a student, when a professor said to me, okay, it is forbidden to do this, perhaps that's exactly what I'm going to do. Okay, so perhaps we need to start allowing those tools and these tools in our classrooms, but we as a professor, we should also adapt the way we teach you to use them and to acquire knowledge.
Yeah, probably our teachers told us don't use Google or something like that, and when they turned around, we started using it. So, but nowadays, regarding teaching and learning from your side, what's important is the learning process from the beginning to the end, and sometimes we shouldn't skip phases. Giving you an example, my children, fourth grade, she is learning how to divide numbers the classical way, but she has calculators. So we need to learn some steps in order to understand how things work. I teach basically normally computer development, computer science, and we before ChatGPT and other generative languages, what we had before was a problem with YouTube tutorials. We gave students a challenge, they wrote a challenge, and there was a tutorial. which is not bad by itself, but the problem is that after 5 minutes you are just copy pasting the things that you are reading, and you are not getting what's there, and we have that problem of getting stuck in our reasoning because we are too dependent of YouTube videos. So comparing to that, I think that having a conversation with ChatGPT is better, because you are going there and I need something to do whatever, and ChatGPT gives you an answer, and you starting to have a dialogue. So we are in a better scenario that what we had before. The problem is when you just go there and just give me the answer, and the question is not the answer, it's the process to learn from the beginning to the end, to make questions. You shouldn't ask for the answer, you should ask for steps in order to understand them and to improve them, and also to learn and to have a dialogue with the system which you are interacting. Because imagine that when you are using AI as your companion for developing a project, you have a colleague that knows a lot of things, and you might ask that colleague to do the work for you, or you can use that colleague to help you and also to teach you during your work. It's just as you having a good colleague by your side. If you ask him to do all the work, then it's going to be the same result as using AI.
Okay, any more questions?
I had one following you guys talked a lot about societal changes, like change the way we do education, change the way we do this, labor, etc. So how do you guys fall on like the regulation? Because there's some of these changes need to come through like laws, right? So like where do you guys feel about that line should go?
Thanks, Jefferson.
It was for you.
No, like our like we do not have yet in place legislation and laws to work well with crypto, for instance, and it happened already some years ago. The EU Act on AI, and thankfully we are in a jurisdiction that actually is concerned with citizens across multiple state members. So there's legislation put it in place to address some of these challenges. But again, policymakers, researchers, everybody involved in roles in the industry need to look into what's the long-term vision for the use of these technologies. For instance, AI is just another technology, and this will repeat again with new technologies. And I don't think we have the framework right now, not in Portugal or at the EU level, to support these fast changes when they need to occur. Right now, we saw the Digital Marketplace Act 2 months ago, more or less. We saw how the big corporations handle the bottlenecks that you tried to put in place to stop their monetization of smaller developers. So we just need speed at the policy-making level at the same pace as companies can actually change. And I think we do not have a structure to handle that yet.
So you're saying the policymakers should use AI so they can decide faster?
Exactly, that's what I'm saying. No, but it's a tough question because we need to be democratic about it, and we need to take into account all concerns from the consumer end, from the company's ends, and from everybody's ends. But again, we should protect the citizen should be the main goal. And I don't think we have knowledge yet to predict or plan ahead for policies that will somehow guarantee a stable society, a growing society, and something that actually brings value to everybody. And I'm not talking about any specific policy. I'm just saying that the framework that we have in place cannot adapt or cope with the speed that technology is changing. That's my main point.
So I'm very pro regulation. I feel I feel like we definitely need regulation. Like I think the industry as a whole and the sort of like global market or whatever proved time and time again that we can't be trusted and can't be left alone, because then we will squeeze every time if we allowed. I don't think that the current like waves of regulation are necessarily well aligned. I feel like there are like just too many like different, I don't know, like different push and pull on the regulations. I feel like a lot of people are afraid that if we start to regulate too hard, then a lot of the small people will be sort of like left behind and like pushed out, and the big corporations will be fine either way, right? And we should definitely address these issues and like, you know, target the regulation towards where there's, you know, where we see exploitation happening. And we should definitely have regulations that allow for, you know, more free research. But I feel like there's like a very marked like difference between we're doing this for research and then suddenly it becomes for money. And I think right now the regulations don't really make a distinction. So it's just like, and I think that's why we saw a lot of stuff where you know, you can make like a fair use argument for a lot of research, but then suddenly people turned around and now making basically the same fair use argument and pushing people out of the industry with like, you know, what we talked about, like building data sets based on basically stolen data in a lot of the times. So I feel like we need regulations, but yeah, we would need regulators that understand the field better. So I feel like we as researchers and, you know, professionals have to sort of like step up and help guide the lawmakers, or like help taking part of in the process, so the lawmakers can better understand what's happening.
Okay, don't have the time for one more. Huh? Okay, sure. Quickly.
Very quickly. Sorry. Okay, I have to. So I just wanted to add something, because I've been recently involved in this particular area, especially in consumer empowerment in the EU, and I've been kind of consulting with some regulation, governing bodies, and there's this area, especially because of the advent of ML, called trustworthy machine learning, and it's very important for all of us, because it revolves around the issues like, I even have some notes on this here, interpretability, explainability, for instance. It's how can I audit a system to know exactly what it's being done and how it works. Federated learning, like what if my company sells services to space agencies, and I work with ESA, Roscosmos, NASA. How do I make sure that I don't get data among all the processes? So trustworthy machine learning is an emerging field of machine learning per se. It's more on the ontology and aspects of machine learning, but it kind of addresses what you were talking about, Jefferson, as well. Not only the legal part, but also the way that we can work better and safer. Thanks.
So this is a whole bit of conversation. Like this is like a very deep rabbit hole, I feel. But like definitely, I think what we need above all else is transparency, that we a lot of the times don't have today, and not necessarily transparency in terms of, like, we also need like explainable AI, right? Like how these models work, but we also need like algorithmic transparency, but we also need organizational transparency more than anything, right? And it's also like how the decisions are made in these organizations, who controls the AI, and like, you know, who puts the sort of like checks and balances into the AI, and what are the rules. Like famously, like the big proprietary models that we have for like large language models, they have a certain kind of like ethics in mind. but this ethics is very pointedly an American ethic. It's very conservative, very prudish. And who put these like rules in place? Who says what an AI can, what question they can and can't answer, right?
What are the rules?
What are the rules? Like, we don't even know what are the rules, because we know that there are like if-else rules and like checks put into place in these big language models that we use. Like ChatGPT, if you ask about, I don't know, like weapons trafficking, it won't answer the question, because it will say like, oh no, I'm not going to touch this topic. But we don't know the topics that it won't touch, and who decided which topics they won't touch. And you know, like weapons trafficking, maybe it's an easy to rule out, but there's other topics that it will just say no to.
Okay, thank you very much to our guests. Thank you very much. We're going stay put. We have one more round table after this. Thank you very much. This roundtable will be on the subject of production and AI. So with us we have Ricardo Flores, current head of operations at Coco. We have Alexandre Amancio, which he's the SVP of World Building and IP Strategy at FunPlus. We have Jefferson Valadares, the VP of Corporate Development at Fortis Games, and Luís Barros, who is an Unreal technical artist at Location XR. So to kick this off, let's start with, since you're all in the actual industry, I would like to ask you, besides normal AI stuff like pathfinding or enemy brains, procedural generation, that sort of basic stuff that's in all games, what kind of AI use are your companies currently doing, especially production-wise?
I mean, I think a lot of people covered this before, but there's this big potential legal exposure to using generative AI. There's also the ethical aspect of it. So we try to typically limit the use, maybe use it for, let's say, generating a base image, which then an artist can actually paint over and create something novel from something that is redundant. Generating dialogue, I mean, in a limited fashion, like maybe more tweaking dialogue, and I think this was also mentioned earlier. In essence, everybody's kind of putting their little toe in the water to check the temperature to see if there's going to be any repercussions. But I think that we are currently now only using a very small portion of what could be used with AI, should it somehow be deemed safe, I would say.
Yeah, in our case, we have a very active legal team, so they've been looking at this, and we have a lot of discussions inside the company. So what we can do is we can experiment with a lot of stuff. So we have some models that are approved for us to try, and a bunch of different things. We can spend money to get ChatGPT Plus or whatever, to kind of do everything we want to kind of learn about it. The only rule we have currently is nothing can be on a shipped game. So we can have new games zero, nothing can even touch the product they're going to ship to the world. Now, that will have to change at some point, but I don't know where that point's going to be. We're currently playing, and then at some point we're going to figure out at some point do we use this to actually ship in a final product. But for now it's just experimentation.
One thing I would just add to what I mentioned before, because the question was specifically for production, but making a game, the production part, the actual asset production part is only a relatively, I mean, it's not a small percentage, but it's a percentage of the actual process. And AI can be leveraged for the brainstorming, the pre-production part, the like rapid ideation. So I think that it's slow. It greatly accelerates a lot of the processes that could have taken a lot of time, which brings you closer to production, which then currently you can be safe by just not using it, but you still got there way faster than before AI.
It's exactly that. Totally agree with you. Yeah, it's pretty much what we also do. It's there on pre-production. It's there to crunch data and make us quicker analyzing what we have to do, so that the pre-production goes faster. Like Jason was like, sorry. Pretty much, we also don't ship anything that goes with AI. It's not even allowed by our partners at all. It's not there yet, but we do R&D and a lot of R&D around it. So we are looking for the tools. We are even trying out some stuff on our own and creating some stuff that needs to be done on the pipelines on our side. But it's R&D. It's for us to be and understand when the market shifts, and I do believe it will, that we are there and we have the capability to go and to follow.
No questions yet?
Yeah, I think I have a similar perspective. I tend to do a lot of artwork and scripting and stuff. For example, I do use AI, for example, if I'm building an animation and I want to change, kind of, for example, I was doing this page flipping thing, and I wanted to change the name of the drivers based on the page number, and I just go to Gemini or something, you just kind of script, Python script, then I grab the code and I kind of adapt it to what I want to kind of do something. It would take me 2 hours to get it done in 2 minutes. In terms of art, we don't really use AI exactly for the same reasons that everybody's stating here. I actually don't find it faster when I'm conceptualizing, but I think that's my way of thinking. I like to concept and to draw, and I don't want to wait, 20 seconds for an image to pop up. I much rather draw it, and kind of that engages my mind more. In production side, more in the real production side, for example, in the studio I'm at currently, we do use Firefly for note-taking, which is very useful, and it saves a lot of time. We're a small team. We don't actually have anyone in production that kind of takes notes in meetings a lot of times, so it actually takes that kind of the boring side of things away. We do have to be very careful, because when meetings get super complex about discussing systems and scripts and plugins and things, or the conversation gets shifted away in too many topics at the same time, you can clearly see the AI showing a lot of flaws and limitations. So we tend to reread things. Also becomes the sense of responsibility. If something is miswritten in Firefly for action points or something, or tasks, we're going to blame the company that made the software, somebody that didn't double check. So there's a lot of gray areas there.
And I'm glad you mentioned this, because people talk a lot about like artists losing their jobs and QA, because QA is the entry job or whatever. Like, how about the associate producers? That's also an entry level job, and they make all the notes, and now they don't have jobs anymore. So see what you guys are doing.
I'm sorry. No, but I think it comes down to the conversation of when, there's a lot like the rock generation thing, when PDG came into Houdini, for example, suddenly you can create a rock as long as your system is well built in the Unix system of your sub-level things. You could very easily generate millions of variations of a rock. So it's kind of the same thing with, I think, a lot of things that an associate producer do, they're kind of boring, and maybe there's better ways of spending human time. For example, I just want to bring something that I kind of remembered. Somebody mentioned about QA people losing jobs because of AI, and I worked at Ubisoft, and I was inside of when Jose built the bot system that was running through the Vision to kind of do all the QA stuff and come up all the heat maps and everything. And it's very boring I don't know if any of you have experience. I think some of you guys have actually run through a production experience of seeing QA testers working. they start at a very early stage of things where everything is gray box, everything is super buggy, builds keep crashing and everything. So I don't think anyone wants to have that job as at a human level. And I think there are things that AI can help us in that regard. And for example, in the film industry, we're talking about AI. For example, when films were mostly done on tape and internet wasn't fast enough, that we could have, upload a shot in a daily. People have runners. Like runners was a very comparable job to QA people. And suddenly a runner job, which is a very easy way to get into industry because you don't need any specialized, education. It's a very niche thing because you don't need a lot of runners in studios. So I think technology always had an impact on jobs and everything. I think at a different level, AI presents different challenges because it handholds like a lot, which is different from all older technologies that came into.
I agree, and the QA testing is a really good example because 80% of the QA testing might just be super low-level stuff that no human being wants to do, but there's 20% that actually requires talent. And some of the best creative directors that I've worked with in my career came from QA, and I can guarantee their specialty wasn't the 80% of just trying to run into collisions to see if you go through the world. It was the 20% that actually requires talent, which I think that AI can't, at least now, replace.
Any questions yet? Okay, so we've seen in Diogo's keynote about how the perception of artists and most developers is that in, I think it was 8 years horizon, you would have AI that was artist or developer equivalent. As somebody that's actually working today, do you think this is real or just report stuff?
I mean, I don't know. It's interesting to see like where the line's going to be, because I think there's going to be a little bit of everything. There's going to be people were talking earlier about like more solo devs being enabled because they have this kind of support. There's going to be companies who are going to like use this to kind of cut costs because it's going to be good enough, like I should say, for a certain amount of jobs. And there's going to be games that like we couldn't make today because they're like crazy, that will be enabled like by people being augmented by this stuff, right? So I think, I don't know about the time frame. The LLM stuff moved super fast, so it's like I don't know, 5 years ago nobody's talking about it. Now it's like huge leap. So I think it's quite possible that it's that fast. But again, it's I don't know. The amount of like, if people are expecting full replacement, like in the same model that we work today, that's not what's going to happen. It's going to happen. It's going to the jobs are going to shift. People are going to do different things. Like the games are going to change. It's very hard to predict the end state, even though that the fact that the eyes might be at a certain level of capacity in 8 years could be true, but the implications from that are very hard to see right now.
I would ask, which human? Humans operate on a gradient, right? Microsoft very famously back in the 80s used to have a grading system with which they graded programmers from 1 to 20, a 20 being 20 times faster than a 1. I think the question is the following. 8 years from now, if a good writer is able to create a world and to create a couple of scenarios and kind of storylines that can happen in that world, if you need to populate an open world, you need 20. You need to replicate this person. And usually you can't replicate a human being. So you get other people that are incrementally lower experience, right? And so you get an open world game that is first limited because even 20 people working for 3 years can only create a certain amount of content. Plus you get a uneven level of quality because not everyone is equal. So maybe 8 years from now, you get 1 or 2 or 3 really talented people, set the tone, build the structure, and then you can have AI kind of populate the world with narratives that would fit within the parameters and the style that were established by these top-level people. This is a writing example, but you can extrapolate for art, 3D, right? So I think that this is kind of the more of the new world that is kind of opening up through AI, more than, well, it can replace people. Yes, I think it will replace people. It already is. It will replace people more and more, but people will adapt, and people that might not be the best modelers get replaced by AIs, but maybe these people now discover that they're really great at something else. And I think it's the same thing that's happened throughout society every time there's a technological innovation.
No questions yet? Yep. There's a question over there. I need a mic.
Hey, so this fear of shipping AI-generated content, do you think it came from the drama from Palworld, for example, or is it something that was always there legally?
I think it's always been there in a way. I think AI, these models have existed for a very long time. I think people probably are more into the programming world. You know, these models have like 30, 40 years, a lot of them, the math behind it. Only now we have the computing power to actually activate them, you know. So there's always been very ethical concerns about human replacement. It's not a new thing. I think now it's more apparent to everybody, because we're seeing all these new tools surfacing and kind of showing the power or sad power of such tools.
But I think it's fair to say, I don't know if it's Palworld necessarily, like I think Palworld is like a game development event, which is like very minor in the world of like tech in general. I think it's more, but the fact that AI became so broad that everybody's talking about it caused a lot of people in the decision like making layers to hear about it, and they're like, oh, well, like what are the implications for this? And then there's like all the consultants selling like, oh yeah, let me tell you how we're gonna make this work for your company, and otherwise you're gonna die. And then a lot of these things happen. So I don't know if it was Palworld, but I think it's the fact that it became like a big boom and everybody's talking about it, it's why, I think.
Yeah, I think you can even trace it back to, remember when certain artists, concept artists, kind of put up specific kind of images to say like no AI. I think there were many manifestations before Palworld that showed that this was problematic. Like there were litigations from artists saying, you are drawing from my art when your model is creating this art. So it isn't creating anything, it's just stealing. So I think that there have been many different kind of red lights going off for companies, and like lawyers have been like saying, hey, we're exposing ourselves to something potentially major down the line. So whenever any company hears that, it's an automatic stop, right? Like they will just like not, you know, lawyers, like they're just like they're like it's no risk.
Yeah, the lawyer's topic is definitely an important one over here. I think at the moment, yeah, this is bread and butter for them, right? It's because you have all these investors and the people that are going with the buzzword, and everybody goes for the buzzword. And then you have the decision making saying, hey, if AI can cut jobs and make the production cheaper, and you see right now how much costs to develop a game, it's like, yeah, let's do it. But then you have the lawyers and you have everything and all the legal side and ethical sides as well. So this is a moment in time where you have these people crashing each other at the top. Obviously, on the bottom line, we can't yet, because by law, it will be a problem at the moment. And I do think it will change, and it will change with the evolution of some of the models on being able to not get inspiration from a real thing or a real thing that it's copyrighted. How it's gonna be, I don't know when, I don't know, but it's gonna happen. And the pressure from both to cut costs, yeah, that will continue. It's there.
Okay, there's a question over there.
So my question is, we talked about a lot how AI can sort of like reduce the amount of workers needed. But what if in the near future we will be needing even more hours than before? So there's this kind of like projection that we believe that AI And the current trajectory of AI is like an exponential growth, and in 8 years, all of us will be out of jobs, and all the teaching will be done by AI, and all the students will be AI as well. So nobody is needed anymore. But there's this idea of like, maybe this is not actually true. Like we are more like on the elbow of an S-shaped curve. And there's no infinite trajectory here. And from now on, there will be a diminishing return, right? Like we had like ChatGPT 3, and then 3.5, and 3.5 Turbo, and then 4, and then nothing. And there's this kind of idea of we will need like much, much more data to train a ChatGPT 4.5 or ChatGPT 5 than what we needed for 4. So what happens then if we need like more and more data? What happens if we're never going to get there where we can replace somebody with AI with our current technology?
I think that right now we're relying on pure torque, right? Like more power means better. I think that maybe the torque is enough, and you just start leveraging it by layering stuff above it, right? I think there's probably I think we have everything in place right now. Let's say if we wanted to create a system that creates real 3D art, right? Like functional ship quality. I think that there's everything in terms of like raw power, everything in place for that. It's just about human imagination and actually building the tool and iterating and giving it the flexibility so that it can be tweaked by each game to give it its own style. But you know, I think that this idea that there's a magic bullet that at one point we'll press a button and everything will be done. I think the battery's dying. But anyways, I think that might be kind of something that might be the wrong direction to look at, right?
Yeah, essentially this is no power. Power is disappearing. There's still some power there. Yeah, I do agree that we are with a lot of the tools right now to develop other tools on top of what we already have, and we have been focusing on, like you said, more power for number 5, number 6, number 7, instead of building on top of what you already have. And you have a lot of crashing data and get stuff done quicker. That it's dummy jobs for a lot of human beings. So there is that space of evolution that we can take advantage of, and that will change, and it's already changing the way we work and the way we, in video games, also plan production and develop the pre-production and organize all the stages, and even through production, how we organize the tasks of the teams and everything. So that can be definitely better, and doing better with the tools we already have. We don't kind of need at this stage to go faster and faster and faster. Obviously those will want to, and there will be money to do it for sure.
Yeah, I think there's 2 levels to this. There's the speed aspect of the game development, and in game development, when we think about it, it's a very also young industry compared to the others. So there's always, every time a new technology or a new medium of entertainment comes up, there's always this huge boost, and like teams are huge. We're trying to figure out how the technology works. There's a lot of trial and error, and especially now, technological time. You know, we try to develop tools to kind of, so it's kind of normal that the number of people engaged in the process of creating something kind of decreases. I think AI is very specific, like I said, because it has a lot of hand-holding, and that can potentially create problems. I think it's been brought up in terms of how you think about, you know, as a programmer, as an artist. As a tool, it's very, very easy to create something more than, you know, Photoshop showed up and people were talking about, oh, we're not going to do photographer, the same thing about the drums that was already mentioned. But AI is slightly different from that, because you can just write something, it gives you something. You don't have to know, you know, I remember the first time I opened Nuke, I don't know if you guys know, but you open it and it's like, what is this thing? And now you can just go and ask AI to build your Nuke script to denoise something or separate the RGB channels or whatever. And I also think since photography showed up, we're obsessed with image, and I think AI became a thing when we started generating images. And I do think the age of, this is more me like projecting myself into the future, but I do think, you know, this age of visual things will eventually get boring and we move on to other things. If it's, I don't know, sound, you know, we had radio, you know, we had TV, we had, you know, cinema TV, now we have the internet, now we have games and VR and AR and all these reality shifting things. And those things were going to change in the future, and I think that's going to reshape everything about AI and everything in the way we think, the way we live, as every technology that's kind of came into human mind frame has have.
Yeah, also there's like a minor thing about like the business of game development, because like the at some point, you know, games had, you know, you could play something very simple for a long time, and then it become more like, okay, you can play this game for like 2 hours, 4 hours, 8 hours, 20, 60, 80, 60, 20, 15. So I don't know. I mean, this also affects how big the games get. So I think if I guess like to give a production example, like you guys know Bioware. So I worked at Bioware. Like they used to make a lot of like very intricate choice characters, like super detailed games. And then at some point they said, okay, this is great, but it was very expensive to make those games, right? So like a lot of detail, etc. And then at some point they made an MMO, which is like the Old Republic. To make a Bioware MMO was like crazy expensive. Like the game had at some point over 2,000 people working on it, like because it was just like, how do we add detail to this thing where like 100,000 people are going to be playing at the same time and blah blah blah, right? It was just like the economics were crazy, and clearly it was not worth, like, if people are paying like $5 for a thing that takes 2,000 people to make, like it's not going to work, right? So that then people scale back to like the games today where it's more like, you know, indies. As long as I have like 6 hours, it's fine or whatever. Then you can have more like one person teams that can, you know, just by themselves can create those kinds of experiences. So I don't know where this is gonna land. This is gonna be more like, are we gonna like, because films also went a little bit long and a little bit short and stabilized around like 2 hours. Like I don't know if games are gonna have something similar at some point, and that might also determine like how the end state of the stuff, right? We don't know.
I think that also humans have to stop trying to be like machines. And by that I mean, look at the film industry. In these past decades, films have standardized to very specific beats, right? And the right way to make a film, if you look at the Hollywood method, and most films are made in this way, if you look at the script, the specific thing happens at specific pages. This is how precise it is, right? Specific pages, like, you know, Act 1 break, Act 2 break, the inciting incident, and these things rarely diverge from one page, right? They're very, very, very mathematical. What this produces are films where people sit through them and they go like, oh, this is an okay film, and you finish it and it gets a good rating. And as soon as you get home, you've forgotten what the film was about. Like I went to see Ghostbusters. I couldn't tell you the story. Like I just don't remember it. It was just like, it wasn't bad. I enjoyed it. I remember enjoying it, but just went over my head. So the point is, by bringing something down to a formula, which is what AI can help do, it is a formula. It's a statistical model, right? It also sucks the soul out of everything, right? So you need to figure out what to use it for. You should use it to enhance human talent and not remove it from the equation. So the point, we should not be afraid of AI. We should be more afraid of becoming AI. You know what I mean? Like if everybody is just focused on having something interesting to say, like in terms of an experience, like Tarantino is a good example in the film industry. What he does is completely fake. It's not the real world, but he challenges something through the lens of his perception, which is unique to him because it's drawn from his experience as a person, right? Which creates something magical that you remember. I think that the same thing has to be brought to games. It's about channeling the vision of a team and bringing it, you know, to end result. And that specific perspective, that humanity, is what will make the game stick. And hopefully, if you do it right, you're able to create it in a way where it creates emergence, where people can then, by playing it, experience that, right? Anyways, honestly, sometimes we're very afraid, right? But we forget that the thing it's okay to be afraid. I mean, it's kept us alive as a civilization or as a species forever. But the point is, I think that we need to mitigate the fear. I think we need to focus on what makes us different, and that spark is, I think that if we hold on to it and amplify it instead of forgetting it and going for formula, this is how we survive the AI revolution, in my opinion.
Okay, on that happy note, we need to finish up. Sorry, no more time for questions, but I'm pretty sure that you'll be able to seek out the people after this and have a conversation. Okay, thank you very much for your wise words, everyone. So, on my part, thank you for enduring my attempts at moderation. And I'll give it back to Phil. Thank you.
So with this last panel, we conclude this event. I really want to again thank all the speakers that kindly accepted the invitation and to be here today. To be honest, I wasn't expecting so many people to accept the invitation, and I'm very, very grateful for that. And I also want to thank Michaela, who also was a force to the organization and working to organize all this event, and Nuno for bringing his keynote and also his discussion here for our event here. And again, thank you for being here today, for taking your time to talk about this topic, which I think is at the moment quite interesting and topical, so to speak. And also, just to end, to plug the Masters of Game AI that will be opening this year, and where all of these topics that we're currently talking about will be, taught, and ideally giving some critical thought on this. So again, thank you very much for being here today, and we'll see you when we see you, I guess. Thank you.